So if you've been hanging around this center for any length of time at all, you know that we are incessantly speaking of oneness. And oneness is an interesting concept because it focuses on the fact that there's only one presence, one power, one essence that is real. Yet here we are, all of us being who we are. So one must draw the conclusion that oneness does not translate as sameness, because we are not the same. We have not had the same experiences. We don't look the same. We're not the same age. Boy, can you imagine a world where everybody was the same? Would that not be the most boring place in the cosmos? We're intended by design to be different, to look different, to sound different, to have different ideas. And that's wonderful. That's a blessing. And that's what I want to explore with you today, this idea of what it means to be different and how we can take advantage of that. It's the looking different that seems to get in the way of a lot of people. The idea that somehow, this is my theory, that we tend to be drawn to people who look like us, who are closer to our age, who are somehow, we get this sense that we're safe with this person because they must be like us. The funny thing about that is that if you look at the statistics on violence in the world, more violence occurs between people that know one another than people that don't. That includes wars. More violence occurs between people that know one another, who thought they were safe with one another. Isn't that fascinating? So we can't really use that as an advantage. The idea that we look the same doesn't make us the same. And the idea of sameness is way overrated anyway, even though we seem to be hardwired to want that. Nonetheless, having the courage to look beyond those that seem sane and safe creates a much richer life. And when we have the courage and the ability to look beyond what all looks the same into something greater, we receive the blessing and the benefit of that. You'll remember last week I spoke about the religions of the world. We did a candle ritual, and we recognized a number of the religions of the world. And although I never actually said it, my intention was, as I read the quotes from these different faith communities, that you would recognize that we could all in the room here to agree with them. That what I was saying was in alignment with our faith here. And that those boundaries that we imagine, that we think are so hardcore, usually are on the edges of those faiths, not at the center of them. And that when we look at the central focus of any faith community, there's a greater level of alignment. We're looking for peace. We're experiencing love. We're finding something wonderful. And that's the path. That's the whole idea of working in a spiritual environment. So the idea of religion that looks so different really at its basis takes us to much the same place. That's why sometimes you hear people say all paths lead to God, because virtually they do. We like this one because it resonates with us. But that isn't a process of making the others wrong. We're just saying this is our way of experiencing the world. This works for us. We bless you and wish you well. I got a wrong number the other day, and it was someone who wanted to challenge. It was a wrong number. They said, oh, no, I've dialed the wrong number. I heard you say Center for Spiritual Living. What is that? And we went off on this conversation, and it ended up that he wanted to make me wrong. And I just kept blessing him. At one point he said, will you please stop blessing me? Because he wanted to be angry with me. And I just wasn't having it. So, and I blessed him and wished him well and sent him on his way. And that's the way I want to live my life. I'm not looking for those divisions. I'm looking for the ways that we can be inclusive with one another. And I find that a much richer way to be in the world. So this idea of religion doesn't have to be something that separates us. It's something that we can honor in one another. So the thing that we mostly share with one another are ideas. And I've been reading an interesting book called The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. And he makes some real interesting observations about the world. That ideas are what create our evolution of consciousness. Duh. But he demonstrates them in some very interesting ways. Like this way. Here's two objects. Let me tell you about these two objects. The one on your left was probably crafted by someone, a two-legged, about 500,000 years ago. Neanderthal was what it was called. They're extinct. We had a wonderful experience with Greg Braden recently where he demonstrated so clearly that Neanderthal and Homo sapien were not the same species. They both walk up on two legs, but they were not the same species. And the Neanderthal is long since gone. But this thing, probably about 500,000 years ago, was crafted by someone who learned it from the generation before him, let's just say him. And that generation, the generation before them, and so on, for who knows, maybe 1 million years. But the tool didn't change much, pretty much the way it was done. You did that when you killed an animal and you had a carcass. This was the kind of tool that was used to sever the parts of that so it could be used for food. So didn't change much over all those many, many thousands of years. Compare it to the device on the right, about the same size. The one on the left is called a hand axe. The one on the right is called a computer mouse. So where you can imagine that one person could teach another person how to do the hand axe. How many people do you think it took to create that device on the right? Let me give you what came to me as I thought about it. Everyone who ever participated in developing computer software. Everyone who ever participated in developing computer monitors. Everyone who ever participated in developing computer hardware. Everyone who has participated in developing wireless technology. This mouse has lost its tail. Everyone who has ever been involved in developing plastic extrusion. Everyone involved in laser technology, language, pigment technology, organizational development, marketing, shipping, the internet, corporate structures, stock markets, investors. Just to name a few. Chances are it took millions of people to create the device on the right so that we could have access to more information than any Homo sapien human beings have ever had on planet Earth. So we could just click and go anywhere on the planet, receive any information. You know, you can receive information faster today in a handheld device than President Clinton could when he was president. Faster. Amazing. We have changed so quickly and moved so quickly into this moment. And things like this is how it happens. It's the marrying of ideas. Actually, Ridley say it's the sexing of ideas, but we don't need to go there. It's the idea that one idea adds to another, to another, to another, to another, to another, and things change. They change rapidly because of this collaboration and cooperation that is happening. Ideas coming together like they never have before. New ideas, fresh ideas, ideas that people hadn't thought of last year. Last week. Things are changing so quickly. This is the power of ideas. So to move beyond this idea of these two, we look at the differences in our lives and those ideas that are different that can help us have the richest experience we can have as human beings. If we stay close to people who seem very much like us, we limit the ability of those ideas. If we spread out beyond that to possibilities through connections and collaboration and trust and understanding, we can create richer ideas at a much higher level of consciousness than we can otherwise. So you probably wonder why I'm all on this right now. Well, I attended a gathering in Albuquerque, New Mexico this past week. It was the first meeting of the Diversity Commission for Centers for Spiritual Living. Apparently, we managed to get over the fact that we had two organizations, and we brought ourselves into a reunification of one. And then the question came, well, what do we do now? So what we're going to do now is deepen our ability to know one another. And let all those boundaries that we thought were so important just crumble. so that we can see that thing that we teach, the oneness of spirit, as each of us, but always different. That's kind of the way it was designed, so that when I relate to you, and you relate to me, we have a choice. You see, I have my own reality about the way the world works, and it's filled with different aspects and ideas and philosophies and such about how I think the world works, and you have yours too. And even though week after week we may come here and share our ideas with one another, they still aren't the same. They're still evolving and changing. So we have two choices at any moment. Something I say that you listen to, something you say that I listen to. We can summarily reject them. And what we usually do when we reject another's idea is we defend our own idea. Okay. But there's another way to do it. And the other way is to find a way to find God in that idea. Now, yeah, I'm not saying you have to embrace every idea you ever heard, but recognize that if that idea is being presented to you, the only presence that can present that to you is God. Why would that be happening? Why would that be important? It's important to you because it's happening to you. What is it that you're hearing? Now, one way that we insulate ourselves is to stay around people that are the same as us. So we find ourselves having limited ideas presented to us, and we live in a world that pretty much conforms and stays the same. And I'm suggesting that we might be ready to have the courage to expand beyond that a little bit, to look beyond it, to see what's out there, to see what we could play with. It seems to be our natural way to have biases. God knows we do. It was interesting sitting with a room of ministers in Albuquerque, and this was the one that just was dazzling. One of the ministers said, "Your people," which made for a very rich conversation. Because your people has been a term that has been used to keep people apart. What would your people say about that? You know, that kind of thing. Well, your people are the problem. And even when you attach words like, "I wish I was more like your people," it's still a your people statement. It still creates a separation. And our world, our faith is about understanding inclusion. Because it goes back to this idea of oneness. Our job becomes how much can we recognize within our differences the thing that calls us to be one? Can we bridge that incredible, somewhat seeming complex concept, that abstract concept of there's only one thing going on and we're all different? How do you do that? Well, you do it, first of all, by a self-examination, by kind of looking at how you've organized your world and what works for you. It's interesting, one thing that came up in our conversations is that not all biases are against. A lot of our biases are for something. And you know, Dr. Holmes said, our job in evolving is to be for something and against nothing. I'm not ready to go there yet, thank you. Yeah, just that pretty picture with the blue. That one, yeah. I'll get there in a minute. So we're gonna look at how we process information, and it all, you know, I might as well just go there. So we're gonna begin because you're all thinking about personality stuff right now. So on the next slide, we have personal reality, and I have been talking about that, so it's probably just fine, Barbara. So the idea that we have our biases, we have our way of seeing the world, and for all we know, the way we see it is the absolute highest truth in all of the human experience. Maybe. But likely there's still some things for us to gather and understand. But these biases keep us kind of separated in a way. Not consciously. In fact, mostly it's unconscious. Because people will tell you, "I'm not biased. I have no biases. I'm open to everything." I doubt it. But let's look at it. Rather than just trusting me to have that figured out, let's look at some of the possibilities. So this next ring around personal reality, meaning you, is called the internal ring of this design. It's the way of looking at things that we might be in favor of, or, you know, maybe not. Maybe not so favorable. So we have our reality, and And we observe these things in others. Start with an easy one. Age. Age. I don't bias about age. Except I would never go into a nursing home because it creeps me out. Or I can't stand it when children are screaming. You know? Something about us either is drawn towards something or away from it. And what one of the ministers that was in our meeting was talking about is how much they honor the children in the community and how not much is done with the senior members of the community. So I want to do that. I'm not going to make you stand up, but if you're over 70 years old, would you raise your hand for just a moment, proudly? Thank you, thank you. These folks who raise their hands are not the elderly in our community. They are our elders. They're the ones that have traveled more time, yes. More times around the sun than the rest of us. We'll get there, but they got there first. They have experiences they can share. You know that many times we've had someone step up on this stage and share something that was dazzling. And that's only the tip of the iceberg on some of the things that people in this community can tell you. But if we don't ask them, we'll never know. So I want to invite you, as much as we love and support our children, and that will not change, is that we spend some time loving and supporting our elders. The Cherokee are so good at that. You know, they give them special seating, they put them at the front of the line, or they bring them food when there's food. They do all these things to honor their elders. You know, and I think perhaps we could find ways, maybe not collectively so we're all doing it, but we could find ways that we support these beloveds who love this community and support it and come here on a regular basis, who have those life experiences. You know, who knows? Luster Free, you sit on that second row every week. You're incredible to interact with. I'm always grateful for you. And I love the moments that we have to share. And I have a feeling that there are many things about your life that you have not shared with me. And I'd like to know some of them. So when the time is right, we'll do that, if that works for you, sir. Yeah. How hard was that? You know, reaching out a little bit. There are things going on here that are so rich that we won't know unless we ask. That's just age. That's all. I've just started with age here. Race, what an interesting thing. I think as a community we're doing pretty good in feeling inclusive around race. And I'm grateful for that. Actually, I did a little study and looked at the percentages of different racial groups in Asheville compared to what we're doing. I'd like us to do better around race. I'd like us to have a broader spectrum of folks. But for all of you who aren't just the white folks in the room, I am so grateful that you come and be a part of this community, for the gift that you are and the richness that you bring and experience and understanding life. I am so grateful. Yeah. Skip over here, because if I'm going to cry, it's going to happen soon. I think the thing that we have worked so diligently on is to create a place that's safe and that's honoring of people, no matter how they love. No matter who they love is not important. It's that we love. And that's the bottom line. So I believe we've done a good job of creating a space. Yet when I looked at the statistics, I want more gay people in this room. Not that you guys that are here aren't good enough. You're wonderful. I just know that enriches who we are. It demonstrates that we are an honoring community, that we love one another, and that's not important. That what's important is that we be who we are and joyously celebrate that with one another. I am so grateful that we were able to do that, and I want to do more. Gender can be an issue, but it's not. You know, Barbara and I are up here every week, so I think we found a wonderful balance there. And in fact, there was talk in this meeting, in our meetings in Albuquerque, about how all communities have a shortage of men. And I had to say, that's not true in my community. And I don't know if that's me or if it's just that we are choosing to have a wonderful balance of gender, but I think we're doing a good job with it, and I'm very grateful. Ethnicity really, I mean, it isn't race, but it so aligns with that idea. And then physical ability, I want to speak about that for a second. We had one person walk in today in a wheelchair. We had one person walk in with crutches. They are no less the presence of God because they use those tools. That's important. One of our ministers at the meeting talked about how she would take her mother to this restaurant that her mother just loved. And it was a fast food type thing where they would go to the counter and order their food, and then someone would bring their food to their table. And how much her mother loved to go to that restaurant. And as her mother got older, she couldn't get around as well, so she was using a wheelchair, and they went into that restaurant they'd gone into so many times, and all those employees that had been so nice to her all those trips would not even look at her. Think about it. It's almost a naturally unconscious thing that we do. I don't know how to be with this person who isn't walking around on their feet like I am. I don't know how to do that. I think though we're beyond that. Winnie, do you feel welcome here? Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah, I love you so much. I'm so glad that you come, and I don't care whether you're in a wheelchair. You're loved. Yeah. And thank you, sir. I know you took the extra time to show up today, even though you had to use those crutches, and all the better. This proves how good it is to be in this room. Thank you. So these are the internal things. These are the things that we bring immediately to us. And then there's the external look. And I want to look at this one quickly. So the next ring, the other ring that we're going to look at here, are the other kinds of things that come into our biases. The idea of where somebody's from. Any Yankees in the room? I don't know what that is anymore. Do you make enough money? You know, I think some people think because we're a prosperous center, we teach principles of prosperity, that somehow your income level is in judgment. That's not the case. We know that anyone that uses the principles we teach and engage that spiritual flow of energy and essence will have a shift in their lives. But there's no judgment for anybody wherever you are with your income. Personal habits, you can take that wherever you want. But the idea that someone acts somewhat differently than you in any way can normally create some kind of a separation. Avoid that. Move beyond that. One of my most wonderful experiences in this community was with you, Don Lawford, and the way I used to keep myself a little distance from you. And when you opened up at a men's gathering and shared your story, I've never felt a space between us again, and that was my doing. And I'm very grateful for your courage to share your story. Thank you, sir. Religion. You know, every community will tell you that all are welcome, as long as you believe like we do. I want to keep demonstrating over and over again that we are finding a place where we can agree on something. The rest of what you believe, I don't care. We can believe that the presence of God dwells in, through, and as all of us. If we can do that much, the rest of it I really don't care about. Education, you know, how much time have you spent in school is such a small part of who we are. Having a PhD, I can say that with authority. What you do for a living, we talk a lot about that, but nobody's wrong in that. Every job, every way that we express ourselves is sacred. It's holy. If you are providing a service to anyone on this planet, you're doing sacred work, and there's no hierarchy to that. Physical appearance. I hope to God we're getting over that. I hope to God that we don't care what a practitioner looks like standing on this front row, but that we can see the God in them because they stand here, and I don't care whether they're elegant or they are something that would be perceived otherwise. They are the presence of God. And I know that we've worked with our practitioners to say it doesn't matter what somebody looks like who comes to you. It just doesn't matter. That's the presence of God. God's right there talking to you. And it doesn't matter what they've been through, how hard they see life. They are the presence of God. They're just in a little dance of hiding. invite them into the light. That's what we do. That's what we're about. It's marital status, parental status. Golly, spend some time with people that have kids and see what a richness there is there. You know, I've done that. I don't want to do it anymore, but I love being around folks that are doing it. There's just a richness to their experience of life, and I love being with our kids. There are so many ways that we can do this, and I just wanted you to play with this. I wanted you to think about where you might have some kind of bias, some kind of sense of separation, not quite comfortable, so that you could deepen the richness of your experience in this community and out in the world. It's a glorious journey that we're on. We're awakening to something within us, and this is part of the deal. So I invite you this week to step outside of your comfort zone, to pick somebody who plays in an area there that isn't your regular place to play, and see if you don't find something extraordinary in doing that. And at the same time, as you do that very thing, I invite you to remember that there's still only one. And that is who you are. I love you all very much. Have a great week. God bless you.